Hello, beauty, and welcome to this podcast episode where we're going to talk about how you can stand out in a saturated marketplace. It seems like everyone and their mom wants to be a coach these days, or everyone and their mom is creating art, or everyone and their mom is creating some sort of business. And something that I hear so often from people is that they just feel like there's so much competition. There's so many people doing the thing that they do. And how do they stand out? And, it's everyone's fighting for attention, and they don't want to be out there feeling like they're screaming on social media, fighting for attention. So how can they stand out? And I want to cover this in this episode because I think this is a reminder that everyone could benefit from hearing, because my answer to it is actually incredibly simple. And once you hear it, you're going to be like, yep, well, I guess that's really true. But we all need this reminder, because we have a brain that takes us out of our own creations and gets us comparing to other people. So we're going to chat about how can you stand out? How can you bring yourself into being a category of one in your field? I want to kick off with a story that illustrates this perfectly. So I was chatting with a client of mine recently. We were on a call because she was finishing up in my mastermind after almost 2 years, like between a year and a half, 2 years in the mastermind, created incredible things. And we were talking about what she's gotten from the mastermind, how the coaching has really, just integrated for her and changed her approach to life. And she was telling me about this situation she was in where she was with another woman who makes jewelry, and she was talking to her about one of her pieces because she has a few designs in her business that she makes and sells. And she was talking about one of her pieces and how she didn't so much like it sells well. She said it sells really well, but she doesn't really like the design of it so much. It doesn't really fit the main message and ethos of her business. And so she wants to change it slightly. And this woman was saying to her, well, if it sells, you just have to do what sells. And the woman was sharing how one of her designs, she really doesn't enjoy making. She doesn't love it at all, but it sells the most. And so she makes it. And she was basically saying, so you just got to do that. And this client of mine was saying, not in my world. Maybe that's how things work for you. That's not how things work for me. I do what I want. I create what I love, what lights me up, what turns me on. And that's the best thing for me to create. And when she said this, what just immediately jumped out was how, when you create things that are just like what everyone else creates, or you create things to fit in, you create things to fit in with the market. You create things to fit in with what people want. Your product doesn't stand out because it's got no way to stand out. Like, you're creating it to fit in. And so it will fit in and it will blend in and it will be in competition with all the other products that are like that. And we were talking about, this wasn't the design in initially the conversation, but we were talking about this client, like one of her absolutely iconic, she's this design, it's her most expensive item and it's iconic. It's just, oh my God, it's just so beautiful and epic and her and unique. And we were talking about, if she tried to make that more palatable, more like what people, like a more generic, regular, like not so different in these certain ways, design, then she would be in competition with everyone else that sells that item. Like, she would be in competition with all those people because there would be nothing about her design that actually stands out and that is different. But this design stands out and is different. And that's hands down why everyone that's bought this design has bought this design, is because it's got this style, it's got this funk. You will never find a piece like that sold from anyone else because it's completely unique. It's completely her. And, and the people that are that vibe, that's the only place they can get it. If you create a generic version of that, I'm just being vague with what the items are, as, for not, not sharing about like identifiable things about someone. So if you created a generic version of your item that fits in, people are going to compare it against where they can get something else similar. Because why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they? Because they can get something else similar from someone else. And there's not something that that really inherently connects them to yours. Like if you just create like this plain regular version of your thing, there's nothing about it to draw someone in and be like, I want that one. That one. Yes, I need that. I need to have that, because it doesn't have something that's a real vibe about it. And that differentiates it from what else is around it. And so, it's like by like total definition of trying to make whatever you offer smoother around the edges, more palatable, and like kind of fit in, and less like, wow, maybe different, maybe jarring for some people, but like absolutely magnetic for people that vibe with it, then you do become part of the competition. But when you own like your thing and what is like unique and different about you, and not necessarily because like, oh, I need to find something that's unique and different about me, but just like, oh my God, because having it like this turns me on, and this is what I'm about, or this is the way that I love it. Now it's become a category of ones. Now people can only get that from you. They can only get that from you. And so, so you stand out from the competition. You not only do you stand out from the competition, you're not in the competition anymore. You've taken yourself out of the competition. And, we're talking about a physical product in this particular case, but I'm going to use myself as an example, because I do transformation and educational and transformational work. And I know a lot of you guys listening do some sort of educational, transformational, sharing your wisdom kind of work. And guys, man, I see this all the time. And I know how hard it is to break out of this, because we all receive conditioning about what is viable and inviable in our childhood. And to claim value and express yourself in ways that were deemed inviable, have no value, not really important, or not really real, and maybe there's even something bad or wrong about them in your childhood, you got to go through the burn of ego death. Like, you got to have ego death to that. And so let's take my work as an example, because this is a good example of something that is wisdom teaching, transformational based, right? So in my work, I teach women, and I take women on the journey of living their true nature and purpose, finding what is inside them that they are really here to share, the depth of like the work they're here to bring through their unique vibe and contribution to the world, and like the feminine creation process of like how to share that, how to create and build a business around that, and how to do it with your feminine nature, right? And so, look, I could, and I did for a long time, because it was just so hard for me to own the things about me that were really different. And I still think that I'm on a continual evolution with that. I think I've got more levels to go, and I'm like jumping into them as we speak about it. But it was really hard for me in the beginning to show, my unique energy, which is, and what it is that I bring to it, because what I bring to it is embodiment, and it's the like masculine mental structures as well as the feminine energy structures. And it's the, and the sexual energy, the pleasure stuff. Like, I just happen to have gone on this fucking massive sexual healing journey early on in my journey, like massive sexual healing journey, which took me into Tantra and sacred sexuality, which then took me into experiences I just didn't even imagine were possible, of coming into total oneness, total connection with my magnificence and brilliance and light and purpose, like my essence, my soul blueprint, my literal essence and what I have to share with the world, and like beyond the ego of any good enough, worthy bullshit, like how that I access that really like kind of unintentionally through these sacred sexuality practices. And then how I just came so deeply into my body, and then how I come to understand how that works with my intuition. And my intuition is just on tap when I'm turned on. And, all of that dimension of my work is really unique. And I'm from an engineering background, and my brain just sees the bigger picture of things, how things fit together, the structure, the energy flow, basically. One of my main topics of study in my last years of university was water distribution systems, which is energy flow, structure, energy flow. And we have a similar energy flow in our consciousness. The energy follows the path of least resistance. And once you understand the structure of your consciousness and how energy flows in your consciousness, then you can direct it, and you can direct it towards creating what you want. And you can understand how to actually take it out of the patterns that you keep recreating, the frustrating life circumstances you keep recreating, all that jazz, right? So the way that I come at my work is really unique. It puts me in a category of one. Like if you resonate with my essence and the way that I break things down and the way that I talk about consciousness and my understanding of feminine energy and intuition and how to, direct your energy to get turned on, how that helps you access your genius and create from your highest potential. Like, if you resonate with that, I'm the person for you to work with. Like, I'm not saying that in an arrogant way, because there's plenty of people that might not resonate with that, right? But like, if you do, like, where else are you going to get that? Else are you going to get that? Last year I ran 2 new courses, Erotic Magnetism and Unbound. I'm actually just in the process of creating my next program, which is going to bring all of that together in one cohesive structure. Oh my God, I can't wait. But I just want to zoom in on these programs, because these programs, I've been coaching for, I think, over 10 years, coaching and doing, and doing tons of just diving into all aspects of understanding human behavior and consciousness. And as I said, like, I've had that whole sexuality arc, I've had a whole money arc, I've had all these different arcs, right? And so those programs that I created, Erotic Magnetism and Unbound, are completely like my work, from the embodiment of learning these things, practicing them, experiencing them, like experimenting on myself, using the things that I've come to understand and the ways that I've come to understand, applying them, which is the processes and tools, on my client, and then developed my own approach to apply, the premises and principles that I've learned. And like Erotic Magnetism and Unbound, both of them equally, but I just feel to use Erotic Magnetism as an example. You will never find a course like it somewhere else, because I have created it. From my experience of being completely, disconnected from my body, my pleasure, and my sexual energy, and then becoming connected to it, and then, becoming actually completely multi-orgasmic and just outrageously sensitive, that I have to warn potential lovers that I'm starting to go into an interaction with because I'm so sensitive. And, and what I've learned, just because so much of it is psychological and how to get actually into your body. So it's all like was synthesized inside me. And then, and then I created a program to take people through a process into embodying their erotic energy and being able to tap into that. And so like you literally can, if you want to learn, if you want to get taken through a process that I've created to reach that end result that course is about, you won't find that from anyone else. It's in a category of its own. Like, not to say other people don't have their own approach to that seeks to create the same end result, and not saying that there's anything wrong with those approaches, but just that like I have an approach. That's my approach. That's from my energy and my vibe. And if you really, if you resonate with how I come at things, how I share things, how I break things down, how I take you into things, then that's the obvious choice for you, right? So it's not, it's not for everyone, but the people it's for, it's in a category of one. It's not regurgitated. Same with this client's product and the one that she wants to tweak so that it fits even more cohesively with the ethos, purpose, mission, and vibe of her brand. That's not going to be the vibe for everyone. Not everyone's going to want to buy that item, but the people that it's for, it is the option, it is the go-to option for. And another client of mine who also does a product that she creates, she creates like these amazing pieces of jewelry, and she, if she didn't fully own herself, it would be like, okay, well, you could buy jewelry from her. I mean, it's on its own, like a particular style, but the reason I'm sharing this because there's another point I'm sort of bringing through in this story. It had a style, but also like you could get other things in a similar style. It wouldn't be exactly her art, but in a similar style. But one of the things that makes her product so category of one, and everyone's product category of one, so like this is part of the whole thing, right? I want you to take this in as well, is the message and the purpose behind it as well. So, like something that I drew out with her in our coaching is like what this is really about. Like what turns her on about it? Like, because everyone has their own turn on, and that turn on is born of like what is in their heart and soul that they're just connected to. Not everyone wants to coach like me, right? Like that's just not in everyone's passion. They might enjoy receiving coaching. They might like coaching. They might not like coaching, whatever. But it's not in everyone's like, oh my God, that just turns me on. I could do it all day and I just get complete like satisfaction and pleasure and joy from it, right? It's just not everyone is like that. Or let's say even, for example, there's someone that is like that, but they're just not turned on about the pleasure, feminine, and sexuality side of, connecting with your highest self and nature and creativity and creative power to actually create in your life. They're just not so turned on about that. Maybe they're like really turned on about, I don't know, because I'm turned on about that. So I'm thinking, what else could you be turned on about? Maybe they're like really turned on about, guiding meditations and like taking people into these, esoteric meditative states, what's it called? Like interdimensional travel, where they just totally leave their body and go somewhere else. That's just like, I just love that. I'm just so into it. I could do it all day, right? Because that's their expression of their heart, their soul, and they should own that so that they are in their category of one. And I should not do that because I think, that's what people will want. I mean, that's not It's not typically, with most of our conditioning in the West, it's not typically going to be what you think you should do to be viable. In fact, you're usually probably going to have to break through your shit about doing something that is so outside of our what is culturally accepted for us. But alas, you get the point. That's their thing to do. And so with this client, with what she's creating, part of what's really unlocks what's unique about it for her, and also then coming into even more of her style, I would propose, but is what turns her on about it, like what she's into, which is like creating heirlooms, not this fucking cheap shit that you buy off like Shein or like this shop we're always talking about. I think it's called Labosa, just like a cheap jewelry shop, right? And it's like, no, it's like people don't have these quality pieces anymore in their lives, or a lot of people don't. It's like, you're going to hand this down. This is a family heirloom. And that's what she's about. And so she brings that through in her messaging now. And now she's in a category of one. Do you see what I mean? Like, she's in a category of one. She's not, there's no competition. Like, even if there's people making similar styles to her, it's like she is going to like collaborate with you to make you a fucking family heirloom. Like, and if you get some precious stones from something else you want to reuse, or you want to create something, she's also really into like creating these mother-baby pieces, like with the birthstones. Like, if you want to create something like that, if you want to create a family heirloom, or you want to create like maybe this mother-baby piece with birthstone, she is your gal. Like, she's in category of one. She's not in a sea of competition, but like, that is not a sea of competition. If you don't want that, you're not going to go with her. If you want that, if you don't want that, you're not going to be tossing up between her and like 10 other jewelers like you found online. Like, but if you want that, she is the obvious choice. You're going to go for it. And, I know this can be difficult, because usually, with a lot of my clients, we have to break through them actually owning the very thing that is so unique about them, because we have a survival brain, which is orientated towards survival. And part of survival, like, you just can't pretend you don't have it, guys. Part of survival is fitting in, blending in, unless you're someone that preemptively rejects and ostracizes yourself, so you don't have to face the pain that you think you're going to be rejected. So, I mean, yes, that can exist. But we are primarily driven to fit in, to not like express, show, or convey something that will make us stand out and potentially be rejected. Because, to our very primal brain, if you're rejected from the pack, you're going to die. Because if you're out there on your own, a lion is maybe going to come eat you, and you got no protection. You got, like, there's big animals that could skin you in less than 10 seconds. So it's, it is against like our safety mechanisms oftentimes. Definitely, like, I'm not saying at all times, but oftentimes it's against like our safety mechanisms in our survival brain to fully embrace, share, and own what is different about us, and be willing to stand in that before it's validated. Because let's say, for example, like, you want to create a product and it is different and it's really unique, and there's things about it that like are just different from what's already done and accepted, and what most people in a very mainstreamy way kind of want, right? Like the demand where it is saturated. And so you don't have certainty that people are going to want it, because you have no proof people want the thing that's different. Do you know what I mean? Because it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist already, or it's very fringy if it does. And so you so you just don't have proof. But if you go and look on Zara and you go and do something that's like, that does have proof because it's what fits in and it's what like 1,000 different people are making or 1,000 different brands are making, then you're like, oh, well, you know, if I do that, but then if you do that, you're in the sea of competition. I could give you so many client examples with like from photography, graphic design, coaching, healing, transformational work. Like we have this tendency when we come to that moment of like actually like creating the thing or putting it out to want to make it palatable to where we know like, yeah, people are probably going to accept it like this, but that's going to put you in the competition and, you know, and so your business is going to be a reflection of very much being in the competition. And why would someone want to buy from you? If you want to attract, like there's just many levels to why I would propose you want to do this, as in own the uniqueness of your creation, what you have to share, because you're going to attract people that actually resonate with you and your vibe, rather than feeling like you kind of need to hide and suppress things about your vibe so that people will accept you and want you. But you're going to attract people that resonate with that. You're going to have so much more satisfaction doing it. When you create from your turn on, you also tap into your genius. So you're going to create like your best work, your most genius work. And, you know, like you're going to be turned on about it. And I cannot emphasize enough how generative that force and energy is. You know, when you just are like, okay, yeah, I'm going to help people build their websites and like, you know, don't really like deeply connect with these clients or their message or what they're about. I don't like love it that much, but I'm just like trying to, you know, create websites and get by, you know, versus like I create like these, I don't know, really like unique, different kind of websites for coaches, let's say, or in this particular area, or with my particular design style and illustration style or something. And you're just so turned on about it, like you're going to effortlessly talk to people about it, share with them about it. Oh my God, I've created these websites that are like this, or someone that would be the ideal client. You're going to share excitedly about like what you do. And, you know, like, and that's magnetic. That's not like, that is magnetic. And it's also like, you are going to feel compelled. You're going to feel compelled to share about it. Because you're excited, you're in your passion, you're in your turn on. So that is the answer to, you know, how to stand out again in the saturated market with the competition. You don't try to compete. Don't try to fit in. Don't try to be like everyone else. Listen to what turns you on, even if it feels like, oh my God, I couldn't even possibly do this. You know, I remember when I was doing money coaching earlier on in my coaching business, I'm going to say, I remember this moment. I don't know if it was 7 or 8 years ago. I remember this moment of like, you know, because I had come up with my unique approach to it. And I remember having this moment. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was this phrase that came to me that was super edgy about like this feminine way of doing money and managing your money and your relationship to money. And I remember there was this really edgy like phrase that came out, and this really kind of whole edgy like ethos that was actually my ethos, and being so turned on about it and like, oh my God, like this is it. This is so hot. This is gonna like wake people up, right? And people may resonate with it or not, right? And it would repel for sure the people that didn't, but it would have like absolutely drawn in the people that resonated like so hard. And I was so turned on about it. I remember doing all this writing and like being at my laptop and just like, oh my God, help. And then the next day I was like, I can't do that. No, like, oh, that's just too edgy. Like, you know, I was just like, like it's going to upset some people. Like, it's just, oh, nah, like, no. And I just scrapped it. Never, poof, never to be seen again, never to come back again. I was so turned on about it that day it was coming through me. I felt the truth of it. I felt electric. I felt alive, and I could feel how magnetic it was. And the next day I was just like, no, I can't do that. I can't, like, no, people are going to hate me. People are going to come for me. It's just like, no. So I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And I struggled along for another couple of years, struggling my ass along, feeling really caged, really stuck. I remember when it first started becoming obvious to me that I wanted to bring in like the pleasure and sexual energy side of things to my work, and just being like, but I just don't know how to let myself. I don't know how to let it out. I don't know, like I don't, it's got I've got such a block around how I'm going to be perceived, and people will stop trusting me, and it will destroy my credibility, that I just don't even know like what would be the next step, like how I can start talking about it in a natural way. And that really took me time, because even once I did start stepping into it and I created my Sacred Money and Power membership, where one of the central things was once a month doing sexual energy practices channeled towards expanding, up-leveling, elevating your relationship to money, your genius, your work in the world. And, and like once I got into it and we were doing the membership, like I just was so stuck on actually sharing on the front end publicly where everyone would see it, the work we were actually doing in it. So, like it is a real thing to have that resistance, to feel like people are going to come for me, or the people that currently trust me and look up to me or look up to my work and get so much value from it, like might reject it and think that it's so wrong, and, it'll be really off-putting. But just know, like, it's going to attract, like if you own what you're really about, you become the obvious and only choice for the people that want that. Yeah, I want that. Yeah, I want to learn to create my soul purpose business from my feminine nature. I want that. Yeah. I want to learn how to get turned on and have, my ideas, inspiration, intuition be an effortless flow that, magnetizes and creates my business. Yeah, I want that. If you want that, I'm the obvious choice. I feel so weird saying that, but I may be the obvious choice if you resonate with my vibe beyond just that. If you do branding, and like you are just so about sustainability, creating from reused, recycled materials, and and products that are just as convenient for people as the less sustainable versions, so that you can really highlight that, and you can highlight like with diagrams and create all this like imagery and IP that illustrates people like the benefit of switching to this product, and that's just like what you're so into. Like, you should own that, because then you are the obvious choice for a brand that does that. Like, you're the obvious choice for them. But if you try to just be like, yeah, like I do branding for product-based businesses, it's like, okay, well, why would someone choose you? Why? But when you own yourself and you own what turns you on and what you're deeply, truly about and connected to, the rest creates itself, and you become a category of one, and there is no competition. So that's what I wanted to share with you in this episode. I hope that it has just like awakened some fire in you, awakened some passion. Maybe already listening to this, you're getting an idea of like, this is what I've been suppressing, or like, this is what, I haven't been bringing through, or I've been struggling to own. And this inspires you to do it. This inspires you to notice where you are trying to fit in, where you are trying to be acceptable and palatable, and, to own yourself and your path and what's unique and different about you, and be unacceptable. Like my book. If you didn't know, I have a book called Be Unacceptable that I published about 6 months ago. Dare to live the life you're meant for. And it's literally about how you can be unacceptable. Claim that true path. Like I've been sharing already in this episode, because our brains, like, we're conditioned to be acceptable. We want to fit in. We want, this survival part of our brain wants to be accepted and be approved of and fit in and sees it as an actual threat not to be. So in my book, Be Unacceptable, I break down exactly how that works in your consciousness, like the forces compelling you to be acceptable and take you away from your truth. And then the second part of the book is these 5 they're so simple, but so effective tools to help break you out of that and live your true path. So if you resonate with that, if you're like, yeah, I need some of that, definitely go check out my book. The link is in the description for this episode, or you can go to beunacceptablebook.com and you can find it there. And if you did enjoy this episode, please leave a comment. You can leave a comment on YouTube. You can now leave comments on Spotify. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear what you got out of it, and I will see you in the next episode.